Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Britt Kanawha West Hancock Athletics Podcast. Dan Kroll here, episode 121 on Sunday night, November 3rd, 2024. This is playoff episode number three. After the second round of the playoffs officially commenced last Friday, a couple nights ago. Like always, I have the voices of Eagle football, Kevin Wilson and Jay Hiscocks, on the podcast, as well as our special guest, Mr. BCMoore rankings himself, Brent Moore. So welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for coming on here with me, fellas. Like always, the goal of the podcast is to raise money for the Sanger Legacy Fund. So I'd like to thank my lifetime sponsors. I have Pritchard's Auto, Triple B's Food Trucks, Swenson's Do It Best Hardware, Levi Dunn Trucking, Doug and Kathy Zool, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Zach and Chris Schlugger, Window World of Mason City, Kelly Real Estate, Nick Schmidt, the Britt Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruise, and Mojo Productions. And also I have Jay Hiscocks of State Farm Insurance and Tractor Tuesday as my sponsors tonight. Like always, that money coming in from sponsorships goes to the Bob and Linda Sanger Legacy Fund. If you want to give, you can go to sangerstrong.com. If you want to sponsor the podcast, go ahead and get a hold of me as best you can. Legacy money goes to the West Hancock Hall of Fame, scholarships, initiatives in the community or the school. Anything where there's a need, we try to help out as best we can. And hopefully, a couple weeks from now, if West Hancock is able to get back to the finals, help pay for footballs and plaques and all that good stuff through the Sanger Legacy Fund as well. 50 episodes ago, I talked to Bob Nielsen, a Brit legend from the 60s, and 100 episodes ago, in episode 21, was Ann Hagen, super fan. She's probably already in the stands right now for Friday night's game, saving her spot. So check out those episodes. I'll have them linked on my Facebook post, like always. So if you've watched this before, you know these guys. Jay and Kevin are the voices of Eagle football. They both live there in Britt. Kevin works for the original Saw as an accountant. Jay is the State Farm guy. And then Brent is the computer rankings guy, City of Ames IT guy as well. So then there's me. I'm sure you know who I am from any other podcast or popping in on Iowa Preps once in a while. So let's get this rolling, fellas. Second round game last Friday night, November 1st. West Hancock took on MMCRU and came away with a 28-21 come from behind victory over the Royals. What did you guys think of that game?
I would first off hat tip to MMCRU. They were really impressive. Fairly young team, a lot of sophomores and juniors. Eli Harpinaugh, just a sophomore quarterback. He's the real deal. Good team leader. Really good running back, good offensive line, defensive line, and based. I'm sure you could tell based on our text conversations throughout the week, Dan and Kevin, and with some other people. I was a little worried about that game. MMCRU was much better than what their record indicated. I know they had a bunch of guys out for their first two games of the year, which they lost, and that was probably a key factor in them losing those games. But super talented team, so hat tip to them. But I thought West Hancock just showed that championship DNA and got the stops when they needed to. They made a bunch of second half stops to start the second half after not being able to be super successful defensively in that first half and made just enough plays. Creighton Kelly was terrific. Brady Bixel, as always, the offensive line was really good. One guy that, after leaving with Kevin that night, that I wish I would have mentioned on the radio after the game, I thought Jacoby Subject was really, really impactful defensively. He's just a sophomore, and he had some big time plays where he was lined up one on one with some really, really talented weapons for MMCRU and able to come up with some defensive pass breakups. So yeah, overall it was the test that the Eagles needed. They hadn't played a team with a winning record since week 3 in St. Ansgar, so they definitely got an extreme test from MMCRU, but this time of year it's survive and advance, and the Eagles are advancing yet again.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with everything Jay said. Their MMCRU was the Royals were well coached. They played hard, and they gave West Hancock all they wanted for 3 quarters. And they, I would just they I will come right out and say they probably dominated the first 3 quarters. They were able to move the ball and got got down the field and were able to put it in the end zone. West Hancock, come from behind to win the game, but they gave us everything we wanted. They're a really good team, solid team, young team. They're going to make some noise here if they could stay healthy and compete next year, I believe.
Yep, looking on the screen here, 0-0 into the first quarter. They were up 14-6 at halftime on us, and they got the ball to start the second half. So there was a little bit of nerves and tension, I think, right before halftime. Where they were threatening to score. We got a turnover, scored, made some stops in the third quarter, got one score, going down 14-12 going into the fourth, and then got 16 points there in the fourth. They scored. Um, I don't know, a couple minutes left in the game, and we were able to run out the clock. It was exciting game. Brent, what did the computer say before the game, and how did the Eagles perform?
Yeah, pregame, West Hancock was a 18-point favorite. So the computer definitely was a big favorite for West Hancock. It was a 7-point game margin. After the game's over, if there was a rematch on West Hancock Field, the computer thinks it'd be a 14-point prediction. So in general, MMCRU came up a bit on the computer rankings.
And so Jay mentioned that they lost their first two games and had some guys out. What impact does that have on the computer rankings, those two losses? I mean, if they would have won one of those, do you think the prediction would have been a little closer than what was it, 17, 18 points, whatever?
Yeah, I thought that was a really good comment. The first game, the computer model thinks they underperformed by 11 points. And in the second game, computer model thinks they underperformed by 18. So if you throw those two games away, you can add 28 points divided by 8 games. So you could move them up another 4 points.
Yeah.
Then you're looking at maybe a 10-point game.
And ended up being a 7-point win, so that'd be pretty close.
Yeah.
Just looking at stats here, Zephyr 1 for 1 for 5 yards. As a team, we had 50 rushes, 343 yards, 6.9 yards per carry. There were definitely times it didn't feel like we were running 7 yards every time we touched the ball. Their defense held us in check a little bit, I thought, but we were still able to consistently move the ball and put the ball in the end zone. It wasn't a typical regular season game where, every time we're touching the ball, it's going for, the home run play. So their defense was pretty stout as well as their offense. Vix led the one catch, a couple tackles for losses, Gunnar Faust and Creighton Kelly. Creighton Kelly, when I do stats to make it consistent with the Bob Sanger era, assists and solos are each counted as a tackle. So if you count it that way, Creighton Kelly had 18 tackles on Friday night, and that was good for third all time in a second round game. And I think seventh or eighth all time in playoff history for tackles in a game. Brady Bixel offensively, his 135 yards puts him at 18th all time in career rushing. He has 32 rushing touchdowns, which is three away from the single season record all time set by Tate Hagen a couple years ago. So just a couple stats there for you. And then Creighton Kelly also had two fumble recoveries in the game. All right. Other scores. Here's Pot A. We had West Hancock score. Woodbury Central beat Lamar's Galen 21-19. ACGC beat Mount Air 41-14. Tri-Center big win over Riverside 58-13. Wapsie Valley lost to St. Ansgar 18-0. Maquoketa Valley beat Nashua Plainfield 38-13. Lisbon big win over Bellevue 56-12. And Madrid with a big shutout win over Pekin 33-0. What scores stand out to you guys in the Class A pods?
Go for it, Kevin.
Well, the score in the class, just looking at Class A, I thought that Woodbury Central and Geeling game lived up to its hype. We had a close one the first time those two played. Turned out it was just as close as the second time was, but the Woodbury Central was able to flip the script on them. I think looking at let's see just a second. I gotta find my note here about it. The St. Ansgar game was that was a very, it doesn't look like it on paper because it was 18-0, but just talking with some people that were watching that game, Wapsie Valley was able to move the ball, and St. Ansgar had some stops in the red zone that kept Wapsie Valley from getting in the end zone. I was a little bit surprised that Lisbon rolled as big as they did. So I think that we're under well, maybe not all of us, but I underestimated Lisbon a little bit, um, just from what we've talked about in our last podcast about computer rankings and so forth. And that stuck out a little bit to me. And
Yeah.
one last thing is Tri-Center. We've said all along that we thought maybe they were, uh, you know, I hate to use the word dark horse, but Tri-Center I think is going to be a tough out. That ACGC and Tri-Center game could be a really good one.
Yeah, I would agree with Kevin, and we kind of had it was probably week 4, week 5 we started noticing Tri Center a little bit more with just their resume, and then kind of digging into them a little bit. So them to beat Riverside by what they did, and I was just looking quickly at some stats from that game. Um, the Riverside running back, I cannot remember his name. Pulling it up right now. He's one of the leading Jackson Gordon, one of the leading rushers in the state. They held him to like 70 plus yards is all. And then Tri Center had a running back go for over 200 yards. And Tri Center also they've got a really talented sophomore quarterback. We've seen a lot of sophomore quarterbacks lately in West Hancock circles, but they've got a really talented one. So impressive win by them. I know ACGC Mount Airy, that game was kind of tight at the half, and ACGC pulled away. They've got a terrific offense, a ton of weapons offensively. So that'll be a really fun matchup to try to figure out what's going to happen with ACGC and Tri Center. Up in Pod C, Maquoketa Valley kind of put the Python hold on Nashua Plainfield in the second half, it sounded like. And then St. Ansgar, Kevin and I were following that game, and I was following some tweets from some people that were there. And yeah, Wapsie Valley, they had some opportunities and to make that a lot closer game. They were turned away on a couple fourth downs, a couple unfortunate turnovers, and St. Ansgar got tested. And I think Lisbon, that was Lisbon and Pekin to me. These two games in Pod D were okay. Lisbon and Pekin, are they for real? Knowing some of the personnel that Lisbon has, just as far as the athletes, um, I think it's safe to say now we can all. I'm going to jump on board and say Lisbon is a definite threat. Overall, after the second round, I would say my overall summary that's changed a little bit is a lot of people are us, and then if you watch some other podcasts, the Gazette, everybody, a lot of people had St. Ansgar and West Hancock as the two favorites, I guess you'd say, to win it all. I think it's broader than that now. I'd throw Tri Center in there. I would throw Lisbon in there. St. Ansgar and Maquoketa Valley is going to be what looks like could be a really really good quarterfinal matchup, and there's some dandy games coming up next week in the quarterfinals, and Class A is as wide open as ever. I think we can say after some of the results and what we saw from Friday night.
I
Brent,
agree.
what how these scores look compared to the predictions on the computer?
Yeah, computer got 6 correct and 2 wrong. Um, sorry, Madrid was believed to be a 1-point underdog, and clearly that was just totally wrong. Madrid winning by 33 points. The other one was a closer prediction. Galen was favored by 5, lost by 2. So very good, high quality game.
Yeah. What about the blowouts? Were they all predicted to be about as such, or were they a little bit closer than what the spreads looked that show
Looks
us?
like Lisbon won by 44. They were predicted to win by 37. ACGC won by 27. That was a 12-point prediction. Maquoketa Valley won by 25. That was a 31-point prediction. Tri Center won by 45. That was a 25-point prediction.
One thing I was noticing looking at the scores of the pods, the difference in spread here, West Hancock won by 7, Woodbury by 2. All the other pods, double-digit wins by each team. So I know we talked like, even though we're the top seed, I felt like we maybe got one of the tougher pod, if not the toughest pod in Class A. And based on scores, maybe we were right. Just depends on the night too, I guess. But yeah, the Wapsie game, I think they were inside the five at least once. Nashville Plainfield, it was 13-13 against Maquoketa, I believe, going into the third quarter, and then Maquoketa ran away with that one. And congrats to Coach Perkins, Madrid, the defensive coordinator. He's a West Hancock grad. His dad was the D coordinator for Britt for West Hancock for many years, so always fun to see some alums having success as well. So, our next opponent, as you can see, is Woodbury Central. A little bit of history with Woodbury Central. They're coming to Britt on November 8th for a shot at the Dome. They beat Sibley Cheatham 28-21 in the first round, and then obviously Galen 21-19 in the second round. Woodbury's been in the playoffs 14 times with an 18-13 overall record. The semis in 79, 1980 Class 1A state champs. They lost in the first round in 06, 07, 09. 2010, they lost in the first round. That was to us 28-22. In 2011, they beat North Iowa 36 to nothing and then lost to us 56 to 12. We beat them in the first round 37 to 20 in 2012. Made it to the quarters in 14, lost in the first round in 2015. And then 2019, they lost in the semis to West Hancock 49-20. 21, they lost in the semis to Grundy. They also lost in the semis to Grundy in 2022. And then, of course, we all know the 2023 state championship game. West Hancock was able to come from behind down 10 at the end of three to win the championship 30-28 over the Wildcats. What are your guys' thoughts on Woodbury Central?
I think they're very similar to their story this year is kind of similar to West Hancock, where they, yeah, obviously a rematch of the championship game last year, but they graduated a ton of really good players and productive players that had a lot of experience that were multi-year starters. So they've done a good job of replacing and reloading. They've got a great tradition there, and but there's still some names that if you're a West Hancock fan, you're familiar with. Zach Butler, running back and linebacker, is a really talented player. I was looking at down their stats real quick, and another name that jumped out at me was one of the leading tacklers. They've got another McGill coming up, and he's just a freshman. I think he's their fourth leading tackler, and the McGill name's kind of been a legacy name at Woodbury Central, always highly productive. So I'm sure if he comes from those bloodlines, he's going to be another good football player for Woodbury Central. But yeah, couple losses. Obviously, they were able to avenge the one loss, and then obviously losing to what we think is a really talented tri-center team. But yeah, Woodbury Central, they'll come in with a really good plan against us as far as defensively. I thought they did really good last year, having a nice plan of attack to try to slow down our offense. But yeah, it should be a really fun matchup. It's fun to get them at our place, and um, it's always better to be playing these games at Bob Sanger Field, so Kevin and I can get home by 10 o'clock and not get home at midnight. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I would reiterate everything Jay said. I think this will be a really, really good game. Two programs that are really familiar with one another that don't play each other in the regular season. You don't find that very often in the playoffs where you see the same team over and over enough that you're familiar with them. But a little bit different offensive styles for each team. But again, coaching staffs are been there for a while and they know each other. They know what the basic schemes that the other side's going to go. So I'm sure there's some wrinkles being put in here and there this week on both sides, probably. So it's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, you guys get home at 10 o'clock. I go to a home game and I'm home at 1 a.m. still. It doesn't matter for me. So
But you're living in the wrong zip code.
I know. I tell my wife.
I live down
Uh,
there in Missouri, basically.
yep. It's a different world down here. I pulled
But
up
you
last
can,
year's championship game, the 30-28 win. They were up on us 7-6 at the end of the first quarter, 21-12 at halftime. They were up 28-18 at the end of the third, and then we ended up scoring 12 in the fourth and shutting them out. Just for fun here, I wanted to show the stats from last year. Obviously, a lot of different personnel. Mitchell Smith was 8 for 11 for 80 yards and a touchdown. Leading rushers, Mitchell Smith had 103 yards on 13 carries. They held us to 300 yards, essentially 299, which is well below our average usually. Brady Bixel had a touchdown catch with the big one there with 37 seconds left, I think it was. We got no sacks on them last year, just a couple tackles for losses, which is always big to put some pressure on the quarterback when they're such a passing team. We did pick them off twice. Mitchell Smith and Bixel each had interceptions. Kellen Smith had some good kick returns. Um, and then for Woodbury, Drew Clunder was a senior last year, so they have a new quarterback this year. He was 27 of 43 for 276 yards. And then Zach Butler, who we mentioned, he's a senior now, 27 carries, 103 yards, three touchdowns on the ground. Eric McGill was a senior. He was their leading receiver, 11 receptions, 107 yards, and a touchdown. For as many yards as they passed on us, and they threw it 43 times, we only gave up one touchdown through the air in that game. Brent, what's the computer showing on Woodbury Central?
Woodbury Central's had a solid season. Um, the first one loss to Galen by 1 point, and the 26-point loss to Tri-Center. Computer thinks they underperformed by about 10 points in that game, so there's room for improvement there. Those are the headlines.
Yep. Kevin, tell us what you were telling Brent and I before we hit record about the quarterfinal teams according to the BCMoore rankings.
Yeah, if you look what's on your screen right now, all but one of the quarterfinal teams is in the top eight. And I questioned Brent about, how often that happens. And um, I thought it was, well, it was actually pointed out to me. I didn't discover that for myself, but I thought that was very interesting that the computer model had the top, or almost had the top eight teams. Uh,
Yep. You take
nailed
out
down.
Galen at 6 and put Woodbury Central in at 9 there, and that's the quarterfinals. So that's kind of a cool thing how accurate this computer model is that Brent has.
One
All right, let's
comment
make
there.
Oh, go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, one comment is the computer has the ability to adjust a little bit based on which games are competitive or non-competitive. So we talked earlier about Lisbon had a light schedule, and I think I talked about two broadcasts back that you need to watch those first two playoff games to see if Lisbon has the potential to really compete or not. And if you see that residual column, they've been playing 20 points better than expected and 13 points better than expected. So that means, yeah, the computer adjusts, it gets the new data, it maybe looks at old games and say, oh, that's non-competitive now. So there's a real advantage there in how it operates.
Mhm.
All right, let's make our predictions here. We'll start with Class A because that's what we're talking about. And remember, folks listening out there, we are West Hancock people. Jay, Kevin, and I are. Um, we're never going to not pick West Hancock. So this is not bulletin board material. I always throw that disclaimer out here. We're always going to pick West Hancock. They could be 30-point underdogs on the computer, and I'm still going to pick them because that's just what we do. So don't be offended there. Don't be fired up over this. We're always going to pick our guys. But then we're going to give as much of an unbiased opinion on our picks when we do our predictions. And if you go back and watch the other episodes, we're probably wrong more often than not. So just for fun, just for
Hey,
information. So
speak for yourself.
yeah. Okay, me. I am usually wrong. You're more knowledgeable than I am. I just put the show together. So, who do you guys have moving on to the dome in Class A looking at these pods here? I think I can scroll up and actually get the pods themselves. Yeah, so it's a little easier to look at. Woodbury Central at West Hancock, Tri-Center at ACGC, Maquoketa Valley at St. Ansgar, and Madrid at Lisbon. Who you guys taking to go to the dome?
You go first, Kevin.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with Tri-Center. I think that's going to be a high scoring game, but I like Tri-Center the way they are able to put points on the board and uh, the diversity that they have. That's another game where there's a high contrast between the two offenses. I think maybe Tri-Center's defense is a little better than ACGC, so I'm going to go with Tri-Center there. Maquoketa Valley and St. Ansgar, it's hard to pick against the Saints just because we're very familiar with them. So I'm going to go with them there, and then I'm going to pick Lisbon to go ahead and beat Madrid and get to the dome.
Jay?
I think first off, I think all these games are going to be tight. I have not looked at what the projections are on BCMoore yet, but playoff football. When you advance this far, I think all these games will be. I wouldn't be surprised if they're all within a touchdown of each other. I'm going to take West Hancock over Woodbury Central in a tight one. If you're a West Hancock fan, you want to hope for maybe a little bit of weather on Friday night because that suits our style a little bit more than Woodbury Central. But I think that's going to be a terrific game at Bob Sanger Field. In Pod B, I'm going to stick with Tri Center. I love their quarterback, AJ Harder. They've got a good run game, and they proved last week that they were able to slow down a pretty potent running game, and that's what ACGC is going to bring on Friday night. In Pod C, I'm Maquoketa Valley this year is probably the team I'm the least familiar with. Obviously, we're well versed in St. Ansgar and Coach Clevenger and company, so I'm going to go with the Saints to win that one. I think they're going to lean on the run game, but don't be surprised if they make enough plays in the pass game to put them over the edge. They're pretty balanced. They're balanced for them, fairly balanced this year, run and pass, and they're more than capable of hurting you through the air. And then in Pod D, I think this is going to be a really good game. Madrid at Lisbon. You got what, Tigers and Lions? Is that right, Dan? So the battle of the cats.
Yep, Lions and Tigers and no Bears. Oh my.
Um, I've been going back and forth as Kevin was speaking on who to pick, and I looked at one thing. So they both have a familiar opponent. Lisbon just rolled Pekin, right? And Madrid just beat Pekin. Lisbon beat Pekin by 13 or 14, a couple scores. Yeah.
28-15, Lisbon beat Pekin.
When was that? Week 5?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. And then Madrid just
Madrid
beat
just beat them
Pekin
by.
33-0 in the second round.
Um, I know I just talked up Lisbon a lot here earlier in the podcast, but give me Madrid. They've got some playoff experience from last year. They've got a quarterback that was a dome quarterback last year that I was really impressed with. And you said it, we're West Hancock homers. You got Coach Perkins down there in Madrid, so give me the Tigers over the Lions.
Yep. I have West Hancock winning, of course. Like we said, we're always going to pick them. I also have Tri Center beating ACGC. Sorry, West Central Conference people there. That's I-35's conference, but I think Tri Center's offense is too good, and I've seen ACGC's defense give up a lot of points to some teams that aren't as good as Tri Center. St. Ansgar wins at home against Maquoketa, in my opinion. And last week, if you would have asked me Madrid Lisbon, I would think I would have picked Madrid. I think this week I'm going with Lisbon. So those are my 4 picks. Brent, what does the computer have as favorites for these 4 games?
Yeah, West Hancock versus Woodbury Central. West Hancock by 7. It's a 70% game. Neola Tri Center is favored by 12 over Guthrie Center, Adair Casey. Lisbon favored by 10 over Madrid. And St. Ansgar is favored by 6 over Maquoketa Valley, 67%. Computer's going to get at least one of these wrong, most likely. These are good games.
Yep. And remind people home field advantage. How does that work in the system?
Yeah, home field advantage is a discovered variable. So the computer takes all the game margins in the state. It decides who was the home team. And from the results, it discovers the relative schedule strengths and it discovers home field advantage. Right now, it's 1.76 points.
All right, let's take a look at the scores from the rest of the state of Iowa. 3A, 4A, and 5A. They don't do 32 teams, they do 16. So our second round Friday night, that was their first round of the playoffs. Liberty beat Waukee, Ankeny beat Linmar in Pod A. Pod B, Dowling got Cedar Falls, and Centennial beat City High. And Pod C, City West snuck by Bettendorf, and Southeast Polk barely beat Pleasant Valley. Valley won by 3 over Sioux City East, and Johnston took it to Waterloo West, who was a good story this year, getting into the playoffs at the highest class. That doesn't typically happen there. What'd you guys notice from 5A, and who do you have moving on to the Dome from there?
Well, it's going to be Des Moines Metro schools and a couple Iowa City schools. I'm rooting for Iowa City West. I know a few people there, and nice win for them over Bettendorf. Actually, LeVar Woods' son, I believe, scored 3 touchdowns in that game. So Pod C, I'm gonna just be a fan and root for the Trojans of West High. And then Pod A, I think you're going to see Ankeny move on, and then Pod B, Dowling and Valley. So no big surprises in Pod B and D with Valley and Dowling. I think Ankeny's playing well right now, and then Iowa City West, just because I'm being a fan with that pick, is who I'm going with.
Kevin, anything different on that?
Yes, I do have some different. I'm gonna go with Liberty to win over Ankeny. I think the computer, Brent can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the computer likes that one to be real close. And I'm going to go with Liberty. I think Dowling gets it done against Centennial. Hard to pick against Southeast Polk just because of the history that they have, but I'm going to stick. I'm going to stick with them. And then I think Valley prevails over Johnston.
Yeah, some of the scores in this class surprised me. Valley beating East years past, that's probably not a very competitive game. Southeast Polk, three-time defending state champs in 5A. They're the only team to ever win a 5A title. 3-point win over Pleasant Valley was a little surprising. Bettendorf typically is good to get to the quarters or semis, and West is kind of that fun story this year. A buddy of mine is the O coordinator. My dad's good friends, the athletic director there. So I'm going with West, even though my brain says pick Southeast Polk just based on experience, but my heart's saying West. I'm going with Ankeny like Jay, and again, it's hard to pick against Tom Wilson and Dowling, but I think that Dowling Centennial game will be a good one. And then I'm going with Johnston over Valley. I just think Johnston's a little bit better this year. Um, Valley struggled with East, but that could also mean like it was one of those wake up games. But I'm going with Johnston there. Brent, what are the computers showing for 5A?
Yeah, I'm probably going to repeat a lot of what you guys said. Bettendorf had a really flashy win-loss record all year. Computer actually had West as the favorite in that game, and West did ultimately win. Sioux City East outperformed by about 29 points or 26 points. Excellent job by them. And Southeast Polk was a 5-point underdog, won by 3. Semifinal predictions: Liberty by 5, Southeast Polk by 8, Centennial by 5, and Johnston by 3. Again, these are all competitive games.
4A. We had North Polk beating Fort Dodge 36-6. Xavier over my former school, Norwalk, 35-14. Decorah Newton was a heck of a finish. We'll talk about that here in a sec. 15-14 Decorah. North Scott beat Western Dubuque 26-7. Pella, they've had a solid week between cross country, volleyball, football, a lot of big things going on at the state level for them. They beat Clear Creek Amana 34-7. Gilbert beat Waverly Shell Rock 21-14. Lewis Central beat Ballard 28-10, and ADM took it to Spencer 43-13. Brent, let's start with you. What was the computer in terms of win-loss here, and then how the teams perform?
Yeah, computer was 7 out of 8. Missed the Xavier and Norwalk game. Norwalk was a 3-point favorite. Xavier won by 21. And you want to go future predictions or just the
Sure.
past?
Yeah, go ahead.
Future
Switch it up a little bit.
predictions, we have North Polk by 10, Lewis Central by 2, Decorah by 4, and Pella by 3. Again, super games.
Yeah. Jay, Kevin, what do you guys think of the 4A scores? Who do you have going to the dome from
Uh,
here?
Probably the
I mean, going to the quarters.
hardest class to try to predict as far as the dome teams, and yeah, I think it's a shame that Lewis Central and ADM are in the same pod. They're two really good teams. I'll take ADM to get to the dome. I'll take Decorah, North Polk, and I'm going to go with Pella. And shout out to the Pella. Was kind of following yesterday. It was their girls cross country team set a record for lowest score.
Yep.
Yeah, there was some really impressive times. So not just a football podcast here, Dan. Talk a little girls cross country too.
Yep. That's my next endeavor, girls cross country podcast. Yeah, no, they went 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 or something. I mean,
Some
they dominated.
crazy good times too.
Yep. Yep. The girls set the record by I think 30 seconds or something like that. So Kevin, and I said earlier going to the quarters, this is the quarterfinals. These games are to go to the dome. Kevin, who do you have going to the dome in 4A?
I agree with everything Jay said, except for I'm taking Lewis Central over ADM. Yeah, I just that one's going to be a good game. It'd be close. Only reason I did is because it's at Lewis Central.
Yep. I have North Polk getting out of Pod A. I have Decorah going out of Pod B. Let's talk about that game quick. We saw the video. Uh,
Yeah.
Newton up one, Decorah or up seven. Decorah scores down one. They go for two and they run a swinging gate for the win.
And
Uh,
it was a true swing gate because they motioned it the whole gate to lined up. I think they were the gate portion of the swing gate was on the left side of the field. They motioned everybody all the way across to the right side of the field. Defense was a little confused and trying to figure out what their assignments were and able to find an open man and advance to the quarterfinals. Pretty exciting stuff.
I think there's less than a minute left in the game, and Chad Klein's son is a running back on that team. Chad was the quarterback of the '96 West Hancock team. Yep, and then I have Pella making it out of Pod C. I have ADM coming out of Pod D, is what I have there. All right, 3A. We had some good games here as well, especially the Humboldt Clear Lake game. That's kind of an area game. They won 13-10 over the Lions. Solon beat Benton 34-27. In Pod B, Sergeant Bluff Luton beat MOC Floyd Valley 35-17. Nevada beat Heelan 21-14. Wahlert Catholic beat Assumption Catholic 41-0. Independence knocked off the defending champs Williamsburg 21-14. Algona 49-6, and this is not a mistake when I say this. They beat Harlan 49-6, and then Mount Vernon 42-6 win over Carroll. Brent, we'll just start with you at the beginning just to switch it up from previous weeks.
Yeah, you got
What's computer showing?
computer got 6 out of 8 right. Computer had 2 coin flip games with 1 point predictions. Computer thought that Benton would beat Solon by 1 and thought Williamsburg would beat Independence by 1. So again, coin flip stuff. Solon ultimately won by 7. Independence won by 7. Upcoming games, again, super games. Mount Vernon by less than a point over Algona. Wahlert by 4, Humboldt by 2.5, basically, and Sergeant Bluff Luton by 17.
Let's talk Humboldt Clear Lake here quick. That's kind of an area game for us. Humboldt, Derek Allman, Buffalo Center guy, where my parents are from. They kicked a field goal, I believe, with 9 seconds left. What did you guys think of that Humboldt Clear Lake game?
Humboldt's been really impressive. If you look at their resume, their wins that they have this year, they've got some really nice pelts on the wall. And so that game coming up is so my uncle is the sports reporter for the Humboldt newspaper, and my nephew plays for Solon. And Solon will be traveling up to Humboldt. So a lot of familiarity with both those programs. But yeah, Humboldt this year they beat Van Meter. I believe that was when Van Meter lost their win streak that they were on. They have a really nice win over Algona. Earlier in the year when both teams were undefeated, they beat Clear Lake early in the year. Webster City was always kind of an underrated team. They beat them by a couple scores. Webster City being underperforming, but they're a dangerous team. And then obviously having to beat Clear Lake again in the playoffs, a familiar conference slash district opponent. And now they get Solon, a really good program from Eastern Iowa. But yeah, they've been impressive all year long. They've got a really good quarterback in Maston. He's just a terrific athlete and well coached. That's going to be a really good quarterfinal football game. I think that's being played in Humboldt, correct?
I was just there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
it's in Humboldt. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then another game that stood out to me, Independence beating Williamsburg. I don't think Williamsburg had the horses that they had last year, but still the defending state champs. Independence has not had a ton of playoff success over the years, so that was a big win for Independence. And then I said it earlier, Harlan, like 13 state championships, 10 runner-ups, something like that. Algona's using their backup quarterback, a young guy, still obviously very talented, but you don't see Harlan losing playoff games much, let alone 49-6. Who do you guys have going to the Dome here?
I picked Humboldt over Solon. I got Sergeant Bluff over Nevada, and hard to pick against Wahlert. They've been demolishing some opponents, and then I was at a loss. I've gone back and forth between Mount Vernon and Algona and Mount Vernon and Algona, and I'm going to pick Algona. Just I had my doubts just after Mansky got hurt that they would have the what it takes to get overcome that injury, but after seeing what they did in the last couple of games in the end of the season and then coming into the playoffs, it's hard to pick against them. They've come to, younger Mansky is doing very well for them, and I'm going to pick them to get to the dome.
Jay?
Yeah, so two of these games I'm gonna pick with my heart, so you can read between the lines on that one. I'm rooting for Algona. I'll just come out and say that. They're a local team. I know the State Farm agent over in Algona. He helps with that team, and they've got a lot of good kids that come from a lot of good families. So I'm rooting for Algona. It's going to be a heck of a challenge for them with Mount Vernon. I'm going to go Wahlert Catholic up in Pod C. Um, I'm picking Solon. My nephew plays for Solon. Picking Solon. I think that's going to be a heck of a test. But I bought Eli lunch today down in Solon before we headed back up to Britt, and so good luck to the Spartans. But it's going to be a heck of a test to beat Humboldt. They're just a gritty team that's beat a lot of really good teams this year. And then in Pod B, I'm going to go with SBL to come out of that pod.
Yep. And I have SBL, Wahlert, Algona, and I have Humboldt winning that Pod A game. No offense, Jay, to the fam. I just think Humboldt's
That's
going to
okay.
come away with that one. That's gonna be a little bit of a jaunt too from Solon to Humboldt. That's a little bit of a
Yep.
drive. Yep. 2A, West Lyon thumped Western Christian 42-7. Kemper beat CLGLR 24-14. In Pod B, PCM 48-6 over Greene County. Mid Prairie beat Minneapolis 35-14. Pod C, Spirit Lake beat local team, conference team Osage 42-14. North Fayette Valley beat Crestwood 28-6. And in Pod D, Van Meter 48-0 over West Marshall. Anamosa with a 48-20 win over West Burlington Notre Dame. Brent, how'd the computer do and what's it looking like for the quarters?
Computer was 8 out of 8 last week. Kemper was ranked number 6, and CLGLR was number 8. That was a 4-point pregame prediction. Kemper actually won by 10, so that was probably the highlight. Going forward, we have West Lyon by 25, PCM by 34, Spirit Lake by 9 over North Fayette Valley. That's a 76% spread, and Van Meter by 22.
So three potential blowouts according to the computer. Pod C looks like the most competitive. Spirit Lake over North Fayette. Jay, Kevin, what do you guys think of 2A and what are your dome predictions?
I'm going to go with
I'm,
Brent there. I'm going to go West Lion, Spirit Lake, Van Meter, and PCM. Yeah, this those four I think are, if you looked at the favorites in every class as far as the favorites to come out of the pod, those are probably the most dominant favorites in all the classes. I'm not sure if the computer would back me up on that, but just from what I've seen and looked at scores, I think those four teams are your clear favorites to get down to Cedar Falls.
yeah, I would agree with Jay on that. It's interesting that the computer it thinks that North Fayette Valley and Spirit Lake will be close. Spirit Lake, uh, who did they have the last round? Uh,
Osage.
yeah, Osage. Yeah, that was tight, really tight early.
Yeah, it
And
was 7-7 for a while,
yeah,
which
and
is a
then
bit of a surprise to many. So yeah, Osage did a good job of staying with them for a little bit, and then
and
I think it was the second half when the doors kind of fell off for them.
yeah, and I can kind of see that happening, in the next game for Spirit Lake too. That they would have win it big late, and be tight early. So, but I got them going. I agree with Jay on all the others that those are the teams that are going to get there.
Yep, I agree with you guys. I think Anamosa's been the story of the year in 2A. Nice to see them get to the round of 8. They don't traditionally have a lot of playoff success. So, but again, West Line, PCM, Spirit Lake, Van Meter, I think 2A is about the least competitive class in the quarterfinals at this point. Class 1A, we had Grundy Center beating West Branch 42-7. Sumner Fredericksburg 14-0 over Manson Northwest Webster. Pod B, Dike New Hartford 55-22 for South Hamilton. South Hardin beat Emmitsburg 27-20. Hinton beat OA BCIG 21-14 in Pod C. And then Underwood 21-20 win over Trainer in Pod C. Pod D, a little disappointed. Woodward Granger, I was cheering for them. They're a conference team for me down here, and my buddy's the D coordinator, but Regina got the best of them 35-14, and Wilton beat MFL 40-14. I was hanging out with Mark after the game, and his parents are from MFL, and he was asking for that score, gave it to him. A little bummed at that one. He always cheers, obviously, for MFL to do well. Brent, what's the computer looking and showing for Class 1A?
Well, last week we had three games that were 4-point margins or less. The computer got two out of those three right, and ultimately 7 out of 8. South Hardin was a 0.3 point favorite over Emmitsburg. That was a 7-point win by South Hardin. OA BCIG was favored to lose by less than half a point to Hinton. Hinton actually won by 7. And the one that computer missed was Trainer and Underwood. Trainer was a 4-point favorite. Underwood won by 1. Going forward, we got Dike New Hartford by 23, Grundy Center by 28, Hinton by 15, and Wilton is an 8-point favorite over Regina. That's a 74% game.
Okay. What do you guys think about 1A?
I'm going to go with the Spartans to get back to the dome. I think they win that one fairly easily. Dike New Hartford, South Hardin. It's interesting to me that Granny Center, South Hardin, and Dike are all within a stone's throw of each other, and in 1A and really good football. That's a hotbed of football in 1A this year. I'm going to go with Dike. That South Hardin Emmitsburg game was one that I went back and forth on the last round, and I knew it was going to be close. I thought maybe Emmitsburg would get him, but South Hardin did prevail there. But I think Dike will have to be too much for him. And then Hinton, I got Hinton over Underwood, and I'm going to go with Wilton to knock off Regina.
Jay?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Grundy Center big. I'm not sure what their win streak is up to now, but Coach Zajac and the boys, they've got that program rolling, and they do it in impressive fashion. Always really impressed whenever I tune in and catch a Grundy Center game or some highlights, and just really like what they do down there. And thankful they're not in Class A anymore, so we don't have to face them right now. Pod B, I'm going to go DNH Dike New Hartford to win over South Hardin. Pod D, I'm actually going to go Regina there with their tradition that they have and playoff history. And then in Pod C, one of the good stories is, I mean, Underwood obviously is a pretty good program historically. So they avenged a loss to Trainer. And Underwood is like, I think they're 6-4 if I remember right. But they lost to some tough teams like HSTW, Trainer by less than a score. I believe Carroll Kemper as well. So I'm actually going to go Underwood to keep that run going here in the playoffs and advance to the Dome.
Grundy Center's win streak is 36 games. They were undefeated in 2022, undefeated 2023, state champs both years, and 10-0 at this point in the season. Their last loss would have been the 2021 state title game to West Hancock. So I got Grundy winning big, Dike winning. I wouldn't say big, but I think they win by a couple scores. I'm going with Hinton over Underwood. I think they're pretty solid this year. That'll be a good game though. And then I have Regina beating Wilton, even though the computer's favoring Wilton. Just hard to pick against the Regals. All right, we already did A. Let's finish up with 8-player, 8-man. Pod A, Lennox beat Arweva 41-6. Montezuma beat Bedford 32-28. That was a good game. Garrigan, local team, beat Riceville 47-12. Edgewood, Colesburg, Janesville, score of the night 70-48. Edgewood winning that game. Pod C, Don Bosco took it to Waco 48-7. Gladbrook Rhinebeck beat Iowa Valley 57-32. St. Mary's Remsen 42-6 winner over Cam, and Audubon beat Woodbine 42-18. Brent, what does the computer tell us?
Yeah, three upsets here. So computers really struggle with the eight-player football.
This is
Montezuma,
those wild scores, Brent. Those wild basketball scores they're giving you.
yeah, agree. Montezuma won by 4. They were 11-point underdog. Edgewood Colesburg won by 22. They were a 7-point underdog. Final one was believed to be a coin flip game between Audubon and Woodbine. Woodbine favored by 2, but Audubon came through with a 24-point game margin. So the computer did some adjustments, and this is what it came up with. We got Garrigan by 10, Don Bosco by 13. Lennox is the overwhelming favorite by 35 points, and Remsen St. Mary by 9.
Who do you guys have winning? What do you guys think of eight man this week?
I'm gonna go Lennox, Don Bosco, St. Mary's, and then in Pod B, I think that's gonna be a really good matchup between Garrigan and Edco. One thing I always, and I don't know how it translates, so I'm not super familiar with eight man, but I always look at teams that had a decent tradition in Class A or 11-man football, and then when they bump down to eight man, it seems to translate as well. And Garrigan and Edco both have pretty good traditions when they were up playing in Class A, but I'm gonna go with the defending champs, Garrigan. So you're gonna have three parochial schools in the Final Four of eight-player football.
Kevin?
I agree with Jay on all of those. Um, Brent might be able to tell me. I did not look this up and I meant to. You might have quick access to it. How many times Gladbrook Rhinebeck or Rhinebeck before they were Gladbrook Rhinebeck met up with Don Bosco? I think those two, and I may be wrong. I fell into this a couple podcasts ago when I said the Geelan and St. Albert had played each other a lot, and they didn't have only ever played once. But I may
90
be wrong.
times or something like that.
Yeah, I don't. I
Hey, you got
can't.
one right, Kevin.
What's that?
You got it. They played a lot, 19 times. Good job.
Okay. Well, I thought they had, and I think they're pretty familiar with one another. So I think that one might be closer than what the computer says, but I still think probably Don Bosco gets them. Just I went with them just because it's at Don Bosco, and hard to pick against a storied program like that when they're playing at home in the playoffs.
I have Lennox as the favorite to win the title, so obviously I'm picking them. Garrigan, hard to pick against the defending state champs. Um, I played against Garrigan, Riceville, and Janesville in high school. I was telling Mark Friday night, uh, every team I played my senior year, besides Garner in the non-con district schedule, every team I played against in 2004 is either eight man or consolidated at this point. West Fork is together and they're an A school, but every other school I played is eight man. So see these scores and these pods, and I'm like, geez, I played against these guys. It's just times have changed in 20 years. I'm picking Gladbrook Rhinebeck over Don Bosco. And then St. Mary's Remsen, I think, is going to roll in the Pod D game over Audubon. So there's our dome picks for Friday, November 8th, the quarterfinals. The winners go to the dome, Final Four, semifinals. West Hancock is now 6-1 in second round games. Moving on to the quarterfinals, we're 15-11 in 26 quarterfinal games. It was the 64th playoff win in school history. Mark Sanger is now 21-2 in playoff games since 2019. And my favorite stat right now, fellas, you know this. This is our ninth straight season in the quarterfinals. To go back and kind of give a little history lesson. We're in the state finals in 2011, made the second round, lost in that round in 2012. 2013 comes around, we go 0-9. You know, the world's falling apart. West Hancock didn't win a football game, made the playoffs every year since 2014 and 15, lost in the first round. And now since 2016, we've finished our season no worse than the quarterfinals. Um, and then obviously we won three of the last five titles, four of the last five state championship games we've been in. So that's just an impressive run. Nine straight quarterfinals. If I had all the time in the world, I'd look up and see how many other teams have gotten to that round that many times in a row. So, what are you guys excited about for Friday night? And hopefully, still a couple more weeks of football.
just another round of football in high school football. Really, like Jay said, we are we're blessed to be able to broadcast West Hancock football. And he made a comment, I think Friday night was in our post game that uh, games like what we had Friday night that were uh, highly competitive games, two great football teams on the field. Win or lose, those are games are fun to broadcast, and um, I look forward to whether whoever gets down there. I look forward to going and watching dome football again. Just that this is a time of year that's really really fun, and um, you know I hate to see it come to an end, but we're getting right down to it, and I want to just best of luck to everybody that's left in the playoffs. Just to play your best games and leave it all on the field.
Yeah, what I echo what Kevin said. What I really love about it is, especially in Class A football, 85% of the kids are playing both ways, offense, defense, on a lot of the special teams units. So at this point in the season, I'm sure I think I sent it in the text to one of our group texts. Like, most important thing for West Hancock this week is uh, obviously watch a ton of film on Woodbury, be dialed into the game plan, but get rest and get healthy because kids are you're going to be banged up after 9, 10 weeks of the season and playing that many snaps. So, and then as far as what we're excited about, I think Kevin hit it on the head. We're just thankful we get to do what we do. And I'll just make a shout out. I hope to see a huge crowd at West Hancock and at Bob Sanger Field on Friday night. It's the last game of the year that'll be in Britt. Win or lose, it's going to be the last Friday night football game you're going to see in Britt here for this year. So get out there and support the guys. You can always go back and watch the live stream on Saturday morning with a cup of coffee or something like that. But get out there and be loud. And West Hancock's going to need it because they've got a really good football team coming to try to knock them off on Friday night.
Yep, I was going to echo that, Jay. Um, Got to get a lot of people at the stadium itself. Live stream is nice, it's convenient, but man, we got to fill those stands and support those kids. Um, MMCRU, man, they brought a nice crowd Friday night. They were pumped, they were loud, their kids were loud. They had high energy, so they're a team. Yeah, next year it's going to be interesting to follow MMCRU into the next year with all those kids coming back. But yeah, thank you guys as always for what you do for West Hancock football. Brent, thank you for all the time you put into, you help us tremendously, and we're entertained as West Hancock fans looking at stuff, but you do it for the whole state every week. That's a time commitment. So we always thank you for that. Now, guys, on the count of three, I want you to tell me who you're voting for on Tuesday. Yeah. Yeah. No, go exercise your right to vote.
I thought this was the presidential prediction podcast.
Yeah, let's
Britt,
do it. Who do you think's going to
BCMoore.
win? Who you
Oh,
voting for and
thanks.
why? How much money have you given to whatever party you might be affiliated with? Yeah, so
The winner will have more than 270 electoral votes. We'll just put it that way.
I agree. I put money on that. So, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Friday night, November 8th, West Hancock hosts Woodbury Central for the chance to go to the Dome. Once again, both teams were there last year. Only one's going to get there this year. So, like always, go Eagles.